Well, hi everyone, and welcome to an introduction to Smile Pod. I'm Jess Smith, and I'm the host and producer of Smile Pod, and I'm so thrilled to be able to announce that we will be launching our very first episode on Saturday, the 6th of July. So firstly, a bit about why we decided to start this podcast and what it is. Smile Pod is a conversational style podcast with a new guest every episode, and we aim to share stories of people who have been successful in their field of choice. Some of our guests are household names, some you may never have heard of, but all have one thing in common. They followed their dreams and overcame various challenges to do so. In a world where there is so much pressure to be perfect and successful, whatever that means, this podcast will talk to people who have a story to share and some words of advice. So a small bit about me. I'm a former radio and TV host for Trackside, the horse racing channel, and in a previous life I was a creative writer and voice artist for what was then the radio network. I've grown up in some challenging situations and faced many harsh lessons and tests myself on a personal level, and I have found listening to other people's stories inspirational, but it also normalises some of the issues I thought I was alone in dealing with. That's why, as a passion project, I thought I'd have a bit of a crack at putting together Smile Pod, and I was absolutely blown away by the people who agreed to generously give their time and also their stories to us. We will release one episode per week on a Monday, and Smile Pod can be found on all podcast platforms and apps. And I've pulled out some snippets from our upcoming episodes to give you a bit of a sample of what is to come. But first, here's a song you'll hear a bit during Smile Pod, our introduction music, and it's a song named Temporarily by the extremely talented Max Earnshaw.
There's a shiver in your heart that's been tearing you apart, but you can't see it, you can't see it at all. You've been blinded by your past, you're obsessed but it won't last. Does that bother you, or does that bother you at all? You can have it all, anything you want, anything you need. You can have it all, temporarily.
It was an absolute honour to talk to Jason Gunn on Smile Pod. His interview was raw and unapologetically honest. He spoke to Smile Pod about the heart-wrenching visits to children's hospitals during his career.
So back in the day, when I made children's TV, I never took it for granted. I think, early on, I remember visiting the children's hospital, and it wasn't because I was me, it's because I was Jason Gunn off TV, that you had this magic that you could go and visit kids in hospital and make them smile and make them laugh. And I thought, what an incredible gift to have been given, that because of the fact you've got a job on TV, you can go and make a difference in children's lives who really are having a shit of a life. So I just thought, what a gift. And, so what can I do with this magic? Because that's what it was. So my favourite things was going to schools and reading stories to kids and telling kids that I'm really ordinary. If I can do this, you can do this.
Right.
And going to hospitals and visiting kids and making sick kids laugh. And I had the pleasure of meeting so many children who never got to live to be 10 or 11 or 12, who sadly are no longer with us and, will never ever know what they taught me. You think it's just, and I get emotional thinking about it because it's like just, wow, there are so many stories I think about of kids and I had to get my head around this, that these are kids who aren't here for a long time, but, what they taught me, about what is important in life, and it's just amazing. That they will always be the greatest things about. I could never do anything better than that.
Kiwi actress Antonia Preble was so kind, making time to chat ahead of the birth of her first child. She's a fascinating interview and also revealed the fears she held about her career as a young adult.
So that was a great element of it. But I have to say, even more significant than that, I was just really pleased to get a job.
Wow, yeah.
Because at that time was it was a tricky time. So basically I started acting professionally when I was 12. I got my first job on a TV show called Mirror Mirror when I was 12. Mm-hmm. And because there just aren't a lot of kids acting in New Zealand. My experience of being a child actor was pretty much getting 90% of the jobs I auditioned for.
Yeah.
So to be an actor is to audition for something and then you'll probably get it.
You'll just get it.
And then you'll do it. And that was my experience up until I was about 18. And then all of a sudden I was in this wider pond of young adults or people who've been to drama school, and the jobs just stopped coming. And it was really scary and really hard because I loved acting so much. I knew I'd wanted to do it since I was 3 years old. And all of a sudden it wasn't happening. I wasn't doing it. And really it didn't seem like there was any end in sight. It just stopped. And I remember just feeling so scared about my life. And it might sound dramatic now because, I was only 18, but it really was real at the time. I have this such clear memory of lying in bed and feeling so afraid about my life because I couldn't imagine being happy without being an actress because they were so kind of connected and so part of my identity.
Respected neuroscientist and early childhood expert Nathan Wallace has for many years been hot property for parents and those working with young children. He had a challenging childhood and revealed to Smile and Pod the remarkable discovery of who his real birth father was.
Yeah.
So do you explore a lot of your whakapapa and genealogy?
That's been a really interesting journey too, because coming from that sort of background, I didn't know who my father. I was told someone was my father who wasn't my father, my stepfather, and then worked that out as a child that can't be the case. Wow. And then had told this other name of someone else that was my father, and didn't get to meet him until I was a young adult, 18 or something, and then at about 30 found out he wasn't actually my father. It's messy when you come from that sort of background, Mum was a party girl.
Yep.
So and so then there was just lots of years of going, I don't know who my father is,
right?
And that was sad when I found it out about my dad, but I can't say overall it really worried me. I'm a pretty secure person. I'm fine as I am, and I think everyone else should take the same attitude.
Yes, and I'd imagine that would really help you relate to a lot of children because, let's be honest, there's a lot of families out there that have a similar path.
There are lots of children that don't know who their father is. It's just a reality. But we now live in the age of DNA, and so I found out who my father was through Ancestry.com.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and met him 2 weeks before he died. He's a lovely man. He was elated to find out that he had a son. And so now I have lots of sisters and brothers, and we've got very actively involved, and they've become really close because I look and speak and talk like my father. So so they're all spun out that their dad's dying, and a 45-year-old version of him turns up. And,
my God. So did he not know about you?
No. It would be like a one-night stand. When Mum was trying to work out who my father was, his name wasn't even on the list. So I think it was a one-night stand.
Former X Games star and TV host Brooke Howard-Smith has been a trailblazer in the sporting world for many years, but now he has turned his attention to helping guide today's sports stars and celebrities to make an indelible mark on the world. He described the process of how he helps people find their true mission and life paths.
And this is pretty borrowed, but within 3 or 4 minutes, you can have someone kind of really start to identify what their life purpose is. So just 5 really simple questions. Who are you? Mm-hmm. What do you do? Who do you do it for? What do they need? And how will their life change as a result? So go through and slow that down. So who are you? Getting a real understanding of self, who you are. What do you do? What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? What do people really, enjoy you doing for them? Who do you do it for is really important. So these are the people that you want to help. What do they need? What are they missing? And how will their life change as a result? And why that's really a strong methodology for developing your life purpose is 60% of it, 3 out of 5 questions aren't even about you. Who is it for? What do they need? And how will their life change as a result? And if you start to really identify those things, you'll start to build out a more selfless path, and that pathway will invariably lead you to a lot of deeper happiness than potentially that you're having kind of self-serving.
2019 Young New Zealander of the Year Kendall Flutie is a remarkable interview. She might have awards to her name and her business is booming, but she revealed to us that all is not as it seems when it comes to being a successful entrepreneur. Well, it's just absolutely fascinating to hear your journey, and I applaud you for the bravery that you've shown, because, you know, a lot of people would never... They stay in their jobs for 10, 15, 20 years and never take that leap. So obviously there's no regrets.
There aren't any regrets. The one thing I would say is, in terms of sacrifices made, you've got to give up a lot of time that you'd otherwise spend with people. I'm still meeting a lot of people, but it's probably not the people that, had my attention before.
Right.
My family, my school friends, my university friends. I've sort of lost lost out on a lot of those times and those experiences. And I think that's probably the thing I've grappled with the most, that trivial stuff of, on Instagram all my friends are off travelling or they're all working in the UK together, and I know that the sacrifices with good reason, but it's still probably one of the most, weirdly enough, one of the most challenging things.
That's remarkably raw and human of you to admit, because I guess it's always, the grass is always greener, right? So they're
Always
looking at you
greener.
going, Kendall's on a plane, she's meeting this person, she's got this business. But yeah, I guess people don't really fully grasp the emotional and physical and mental stress that could put on you.
Yeah, I guess I miss a lot of the normalcy. Like, I do travel a lot. I've, been overseas a couple of times this month, definitely a few times next month. Visited, I feel like, every city in New Zealand in the last couple of months. But it's work. I enjoy it, but it's work. I'm not off sightseeing and not off shopping, and I don't know what else people do anymore. I've lost touch completely.
Right.
It is work, so I certainly do get jealous of people having this fun time.
My dear friend Al Kincaid is best known to New Zealanders as Frank Flash, children's TV icon of the 80s. Al was only too happy to reminisce about his days performing on television and revealed a few secrets of the trade.
I was, for my last episode, I was shot out of a cannon.
Was that your idea?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And I had a huge fake ear that I stuck on the top of my head, because that was my wild frontier.
Oh my God.
And this cannon was a 44-gallon drum.
Yeah.
And I sort of hid. This is one of those edit things where they thought that it was live or whatever, but and so I snuck in, sort of knelt down into this drum, and I can't remember the guy's name. Somebody Dixon, the props guy, thought he'd sort of amp up the explosion a bit. And so when you do a you can't do it now, of course, with, health and safety and stuff. You'd use a powder explosive that was just by the wee detonator, give a huge puff of smoke. So if you wanted to make somebody vanish or whatever, what you'd do is you'd have the puff of smoke in front of the camera. It would explode, come full frame, and then you'd do another one without the person there.
Right.
And then you'd edit on the full frame of that second one together, and so it looks like the person. That's the sort of thing. So I did the same sort of thing with me being shot out of the cannon. And it was silly. In fact, that was the day when that was Catherine McPherson's first episode. I was shot out of the cannon, and then that was at the end of the show. And then Catherine came in at the on the last scene saying, "Hello, anyone here?" Oh, so that was when she started.
Right. So did Frank die? Like,
Who knows? Well, I've always, in another interview, I've said he died in a plane crash.
yes, because that's what I've read. But I don't think you could ever fully kill Frank Flash, could you?
No, not with all the things that are online and
No.
now, I suppose. But
Despite his intimidating name, educator and activist Richie Hardcore was honest and raw in his conversation with us. After experiencing a difficult childhood filled with domestic abuse and alcoholism, Richie found kinship and discipline in the world of Muay Thai boxing before becoming a public speaker. Among many of the issues he is shining a light on is masculinity and the way we are raising boys in this country.
As the conversations evolved in my space, I've started looking at like masculinity. How do we learn about being a man? And again, the research tells us that we're pressured and shaped, and masculinity is a cultural construction. In that the toys we give boys and the toys that we give girls have historically been very different.
Yeah.
The way we treat them because of their sex is very different. Blue and pink, like those are cultural things.
Yeah.
So over a body of years, the research has come down to figure out that boys are expected to like win at all costs, have a primacy, meant to work really hard, pursue the status, meant to be playboys, we're meant to disdain homosexuals and indeed femininity, meant to be emotionally stoic, meant to be aggressive.
Someone pisses you off, you smack them in the face.
Yeah, exactly. You're not meant to like back down from fights. And so the research repeatedly tells us that. And so what the research also tells us is that the more you try and fit into that box of culturally prescribed and enforced behavior, and when I say enforced, I think about being teased. Oh, you fucking fag, or like harden up, or don't be gay, or don't be a soft cock, or what a mummy's boy, or fucking only girls wear that. That's how boys can speak to each other. That's how parents can talk to their sons. Every time a woman says, I want a boyfriend who's 6'3" and earns heaps of money, that's the same cultural expectation that is placed on male understandings of what they're meant to be.
Yeah.
The more that you try and fit in that box, the more psychological distress you experience. That's what the data tells us. And when you're psychologically distressed in a culture which has a primacy of violence, the inability to talk about your feelings, and glorifies substance use, how the fuck do you think boys are going to act? We're going to be violent, and we're going to get wasted.
And we wonder why.
And we're going to hurt other people.
Yeah.
So men in New Zealand make up 93% of the prison population. We are overrepresented in suicides. I think we make up 73% or something like that of all suicides. We make up like 3/4 of fatal road accidents, or 2/3 of fatal road accidents. And we have a massive mental health crisis. And we problem drug use.
Well known and revered for his impressions of Paula Bennett and Simon Bridges, Tom Sainsbury is best known for his role as a comedian and Snapchat dude on Facebook. An award-winning playwright, Tom explained that his passion for acting was not always public knowledge.
Well, back then it was basically whatever I kind of saw. So like Smurfs was a huge influence to me for me early on. And then like Star Wars later, and then when I was a teenager it became Scream. Like there's a bit like it was whatever was kind of in vogue at the time, and then I just kind of do my own renditions of it or be inspired by that genre.
Yeah. And was your family supportive? Would they have to play the audience at times?
No, it was always by myself. It was always me walking around by myself, and no one was ever the audience. And I used to think it was very strange. It was my New Year's resolution at some points to stop doing it because I thought it was like some kind of psychological problem.
What, that you wanted to perform and talk to yourself?
That I wanted to talk to myself and tell myself stories. Like, because when I was doing it, I was like, this isn't really healthy.
Yeah, but I guess most people do that in their head every day, right? You're having that constant play go on in your head where you're having this dialogue. Yours was just external.
Exactly.
Columnist Verity Johnson became a household name after featuring on The Paul Henry Show. And while she might seem like she's always had it all together, the bubbly journalist really struggled in her early 20s.
Because this was over the space of about 2 years. And the end of my degree, in December, I came back to New Zealand because I wasn't sure what I was doing next, because I hadn't got any plan at all, like literally none. I'd spent my entire university degrees getting drunk and doing stand-up comedy. It was fun, but
stand-up comedy?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I did the Melbourne International Comedy Festival a couple of times.
Did you?
Yeah. I was part of the Melbourne International Law Review as well, which was really cool.
Wow.
I auditioned for 7 days. I was runner-up. I still cry over that.
Who did you miss out to?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Is that the worst thing, like watching it now? You're like, was it you? Bitch. Did I miss out because of you? I didn't realise that.
Yeah. So that was what I was basically doing when I was in Australia, as opposed to getting a degree.
Okay, so were you like kind of torn between, am I going to pursue comedy or be a journalist? Like, were you going to be a funny journalist? Where was Verity going at that point?
Verity was in the middle of a quarter life crisis, and Verity was just drinking a lot, not eating, and was pre-diabetic, and then had a massive collapse and had to sort of sort her life out. I wasn't really thinking about anything. I was sort of chasing a spiral of distraction, which was escalating, and it was a series of terrible relationships and terrible life choices and massively making a mess of stuff. And then the comedy was happening as well because I was really interested and I liked it, but I never thought that anything would happen from it. And I never thought I'd be on TV. I never thought I'd do any of that stuff. I was just doing things and not really thinking about them.
Yeah.
And then, so at the end of my degree, I had a bit of a meltdown, and my parents came and got me from Australia and brought me home.
Bless them.
I know.
My mum's had
I
to
know.
do that to me too.
Yeah.
Don't worry. That's
Yeah.
like you can't go back up if you haven't hit the bottom.
Yeah.
Eh? Like you've got to just absolutely.
You've got to absolutely bomb out, and then you realise how close you were to losing absolutely everything.
Anna Wilcox is a host of The Crowd Goes Wild and a former Olympic skier. She had her life mapped out on the mountain wearing the silver fern until 2 nasty accidents ended her skiing career suddenly.
And then at the first Olympic qualifier in France, again, same thing. I was like, yeah, this is me. Finally, I was the first to hit the course. You know, it's always terrifying to hit the course for the first time. And I was like dropped in first. And I just was in a whole different gear. And then I broke my back.
Broke your back?
Yeah. So I was like, within the space of like 20 seconds, suddenly I was lying in the snow and I knew that this was really bad. And it actually followed, I missed, during that period, I missed a sort of another huge incident. But the September before I broke my back, I had a really bad head injury.
Oh my gosh.
And that was a real pivotal time in my life because I lost my short-term memory for a long time, and I lost my personality for it was probably about 3 weeks before I could sort of people were like, oh, you're back kind of thing, and I was like, where did I go?
God.
Because you don't know how you're feeling. All you know is like what's in your head now. You don't remember the person that you were yesterday when you've had a head injury. So it's scary when people are like, oh, you're back again, and I'm like, oh God,
where did I go?
Yeah.
Claire Robbie has graced our television screens for many years as a journalist before her relationship saw her follow her husband to America. To the outside world, she seemed to have it all together, but inside she was struggling with a personal battle.
Because we lived quite a glamorous looking lifestyle. We travelled a lot. His job was, he was quite well known. And, on the surface, the traveling and the living in Los Angeles and this Hollywood lifestyle looked great, but on the inside I was desperately unhappy and really unfulfilled, and
You'd be pretty lonely there too.
So lonely, incredibly lonely. And so I started going to yoga a little bit to this little place around the corner from my house, and there was this quote in the corner of the yoga studio by Anas Nin, and it was, the risk to remain tight in a bud soon became more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And I didn't know how that was kind of imprinting on me, but this little quote, I can still see it in the corner of that room to this day. So I went through a couple of years of quite a dark time for me, and people who were really close to me sort of knew. I wouldn't have called it depression, because we drank so much and we partied so hard. A lot of those lows, you kind of think, oh, it's a hangover, you don't, when you are drinking that much and going, living this very hectic up and down lifestyle, you never really can feel your own homeostasis. Like those extremes felt, extreme highs of, partying in at these incredible hotels with all these celebrities, and then the next day feeling really, bottoming out and feeling so lonely and scared and like, what is the point of all this?
Yeah. So that's a taste of what's to come on Smilin' Pod. Thank you so much for listening, and I cannot wait to bring you weekly episodes from July 6th. Make sure you follow us on social media and keep an eye out for our new episodes each week. I'm looking forward to sharing these amazing conversations with you. We'll catch you soon.
You can have it all, anything you want. free.